They lied.
It wasn't built for like 10, was it?
Apparently. They want me to actually start on time, so. Alright, so. Welcome everybody to another episode of Lifetime Before. I'm seeing anybody pop in. No, you didn't join. Okay, alright. Well, they're gone again, so I don't know. I'm letting everybody know that I'm going to get my drink because I forgot to get the drink. For the Discord on, but the whole other issue. You want me to hop on, or you can give them that. Just hop on and then we'll get started. Right? Just giving us everybody a few minutes because they're also following a link from Facebook. So just give us a second. And me to get everybody's drinks ready and with my drinks ready. Mine. Just me. Voice, select voice. Oh. So we are now on Discord as well. And we've got one viewer, which is okay. So we're going to start in about 2 minutes. Sad that this one's just not messing with it anything. Good. And everybody can hear me, and the fan isn't too distracting because it's kind of hot here. No doubt. No, we're not doing that tonight. Also, going to land out. Every time I know you can. And stuff. I have a whole bunch of stuff and I don't have that. Because I know I really find it. Why would they not be here? Well, I guess we'll be reading from my phone because I know I have it on here because I was reading it at one point. Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. I have it here. Why is it not here? Huh. I want to transfer that. And okay, so where we left off last time for the Alice in Wonderland was we were on chapter or section 4, which is titled "The Rabbit Sends in a Little Bill." It was the White Rabbit, trotting slowly back again, and looking anxiously about as it went, as if it had lost something. Alice heard it mutter to itself. The Duchess, oh my dear paws, oh my fur and whiskers, she'll get me executed, as sure as ferrets are ferrets. Where can I have dropped them, I wonder? Alice guessed in a moment that it was looking for the fan and the pair of white kid gloves. She very good naturedly began hunting about for them, but they were nowhere to be seen. Everything seemed to have changed. Very soon the rabbit noticed Alice, and called to her in an angry tone. "Why, Mary Ann, what are you doing out here? Run home this moment and fetch me a pair of gloves and a fan. Quick now." "He took me for his housemaid," said Alice as she ran off. "How surprised he'll be when he finds out who I am." As she said this, she came upon a neat little house. On the door, which was a bright brass plate with the name W. Rabbit engraved upon it. She went in without knocking and hurried upstairs, in great fear lest she should meet the real Mary Ann, and be turned out of the house before she had found the fan and gloves. By this time, Alice had found her way into the tiny little room with a table in the window, and on it a fan and 2 or 3 pairs of tiny white kid gloves. She took up the fan and a pair of the gloves and was just going to leave the room when her eyes fell down upon a little bottle that stood near the looking glass. She uncorked it and put it to her lips, saying to herself, "I do hope it'll make me grow large again, for really I'm quite tired of being such a tiny little thing." Before she had drunk half the bottle, she found her head pressing against the ceiling, and had to stoop to save her neck from being broken. She hastily put down the bottle, remarking, "That's quite enough. I hope I shan't grow any more." Alas, it was too late to wish that. It went on growing, and as a last resource, she put one arm out of the window and one foot out of the chimney, and said to herself, "Now I can do no more, whatever happens. What will become of me?" Luckily for Alice, the little magic bottle had now had its full effect, and she grew no larger. After a few minutes, she heard a voice outside and stopped to listen. Mary Ann," said the voice. "Fetch me my gloves this instant." Then came a little pattering of feet on the stairs. Alice knew it was the rabbit. That's what she thought about. Presently the rabbit came up to the door and tried to open it. But as the door opened inwards and Alice's elbow was pressed hard against it, that attempt proved a failure. Alice heard it say to itself, "Then I'll go round and get in at the window." That you won't, thought Alice, and after waiting till she fancied she heard the rabbit just under the window, she suddenly spread out her hand and made a snatch in the air. She did not get hold of anything, but she heard a little shriek and a fall and a crash of broken glass, from which she concluded that it was just possible it had fallen into a cucumber frame or something of the sort. Next came an angry voice, the rabbit's. "Pat, Pat, where are you?" And then a voice she had never heard before. "Sure then, I'm here, digging for apples, your honor." "Here, come and help me out of this. Now tell me, Pat, what's that in the window?" "Sure, it's an arm, your honor." "Well, it's got no business there, at any rate. Go and take it away." There was a long silence after this, and Alice could only hear. This time there were two little shrieks, and more sounds of broken glass. "I wonder what they'll do next," thought Alice. "As for pulling me out the window, I only wish they could." She waited for some time without hearing anything more. At last came a rumbling of little cart wheels, and the sound of a good many voices all talking together. She made out the words, "Where's the other ladder? Bill's got the other. Bill, here, Bill. Who's to go down the chimney? Nay, I shan't. You do it. Here, Bill. The master says you've got to go down the chimney." Alice drew her foot as far down the chimney as she could, and waited till she heard a little animal scratching and scrambling about in the chimney close above her. Then she gave one sharp kick and waited to see what would happen next. The first thing she heard was a general chorus of "There goes Bill." Then the rabbit's voice a look, "Catch him, you by the hedge." Then silence, and then another confusion of voices. "Hold up his head, Brandy, now. Don't choke him. What happened to you?" Last came a little feeble, squeaking voice. "Well, I hardly know. No more, thank you. I'm better now. All I know is something comes at me like a jack in the box and goes up like a skyrocket, I does." After a minute or two of silence, they began moving about again, and Alice heard the rabbit say, "A barrowful will do, to begin with." "A barrowful of what?" thought Alice, but she had not long to doubt. For the next moment a shower of little pebbles came rattling in at the window, and some of them hit her in the face. Alice noticed with some and a bright look into her head. "If I eat one of these little cakes," she thought, "it's sure to make some change in my size." Where'd you get that idea? So she swallowed one of the cakes, and was delighted to find that she began shrinking directly. As soon as she was small enough to get through the door, she ran out of the house and found quite a crowd of little animals and birds waiting outside. They all made a rush at Alice the moment she appeared, but she ran off as hard as she could, and soon found herself safe in a thick wood. "The first thing I've got to do," said Alice to herself, as she wandered about in the wood, "is to grow to my right size again. And the second thing is to find my way into that lovely garden. I suppose I ought to eat or drink something or other. But the great question is, what?" Alice looked all around her at the flowers and blades of grass, but she could not see anything like that looked like the right thing to eat or drink under the circumstances. There was a large mushroom growing near her, about the same height as herself. She stretched herself up on tiptoe and peeped over the edge, and her eyes, with his arms folded, quietly smoking a long hookah, and taking not the smallest notice. Part 5. Advice from a Caterpillar. At last the caterpillar took the hookah out of its mouth, and addressed Alice in a languid, sleepy voice. "Who are you?" said the caterpillar. Alice replied, rather shyly, I hardly know, sir, just at present. At least I know who I was when I got up this morning, but I think I must have changed several times since then." "What do you mean by that?" said the caterpillar. "I can't explain myself, I'm afraid, sir," said Alice, "because I'm not myself, you see. So many different sizes in a day is very confusing." She drew herself up and said very gravely, "I think you ought to tell me who you are first." "Why?" said the caterpillar. As Alice could not think of any good reason, and the caterpillar seemed to be in a very unpleasant state of mind, she turned away. "Come back," said the caterpillar, calling after her. "I've something important to say." Alice turned and came back again. "Keep your temper," said the caterpillar. "Is that all?" said Alice, swallowing down her anger as well as she could. "No," said the caterpillar. It unfolded its arms, took the hookah out of its mouth again, and said, "So you think you're changed, do you?" "I'm afraid I am, sir," said Alice. "I can't remember things as I used, and I don't keep the same size for 10 minutes together." "What size do you want to be?" asked the caterpillar. "Oh, I'm not particular as to size," Alice hastily replied. "Only one doesn't like changing so often. I should like to be a little larger, sir, if you wouldn't mind," said Alice. 3 inches is such a wretched height to be." "It is a very good height indeed," said the caterpillar angrily, rearing itself upright as it spoke. It was exactly 3 inches high. In a minute or two, the caterpillar got down off the mushroom and crawled away into the grass, merely remarking as it went, "One side will make you grow taller, the other side will make you grow shorter." "One side of what? The other side of what?" thought Alice to herself. "Mushroom," said the caterpillar, just as if she had asked it aloud, and in another moment it was out of sight. Alice remained looking thoughtfully at the mushroom for a minute, trying to make out which were the two sides of it. At last she stretched her arms round it as far as they would go, and broke off a bit of the edge with each hand bit to try the effect. The next moment she felt a violent blow underneath her chin. It had struck her foot. She was a good deal frightened by this very sudden change, as she was shrinking rapidly. So she set to work at once to eat some of the other bit. Her chin was pressed so closely against her foot that there was hardly room to open her mouth, but she did at last, and managed to swallow a morsel of the left-hand bit. "Come, my head's free at last," said Alice. But all she could see when she looked down was an immense length of neck, which seemed to rise like a stalk out of a sea of green leaves that lay far below her. "Where have my shoulders got to? And oh, my poor hands! How is it I can't see you?" She was delighted to find that her neck would bend about easily in any direction, like a serpent. She had just succeeded in curving it down into a graceful zigzag, and was going to dive in among the leaves, when a sharp hiss made her draw back in a sudden hurry. A large pigeon had flown into her face and was beating her violently with its wings. "Serpent!" cried the pigeon. "I'm not a serpent," said Alice indignantly. "Let me alone. I've tried the roots of trees, and I've tried the banks, and I've tried hedges," the pigeon went on. "But those serpents, there's no pleasing them." Alice was more and more puzzled. "As if it wasn't trouble enough hatching the eggs," said the pigeon. "But I must be on the lookout for serpents day and night. And just as I'd taken the highest tree in the wood," continued the pigeon, raising its voice to a shriek, "and just as I was thinking I should be free of them at last, they must needs come wriggling down from the sky. Ah, serpents!" "But I'm not a serpent, I tell you," said Alice. I'm a, I'm a little girl," she added rather doubtfully, as she remembered the number of changes she had gone through that day. "You're looking for eggs. I know that well enough," said the pigeon, "and what does it matter to me whether you're a little girl or a serpent?" "It matters a good deal to me," said Alice hastily, "but I'm not looking for eggs, as it happens. And if I was, I shouldn't want yours. I don't like them raw." "Well, be off then," said the pigeon, in a sulky tone, as it settled down again into its nest. Alice crouched down among the trees as well as she could, for her neck kept getting entangled among the branches, and every now and then she had to stop and untwist it. After a while, she remembered that she still held pieces of mushroom in her hands, and she set to work very carefully, nibbling first at one and then the other, and growing some unusual height. It was when she had been anything near the right size that it felt quite strange at first. "The next thing is to get into that beautiful garden. How is that to be done, I wonder?" As she said this, she came suddenly upon an open place, with a little house in it about 4 feet high. "Whoever lives there," thought Alice, "it'll never do to come upon them this size. Why, I should frighten them out of their wits." She did not venture to go near the house till she had brought herself down to 9 inches high. That section. 8:28. So we usually end at 8:45. So we got 15 more minutes. So maybe perhaps one more section. So the next section is the pig and pepper. For a minute or two, she stood looking at the house, when suddenly a footman in livery, came running out of the wood. Judging by his face only, she would have called him a fish, and rapped loudly at the door with his knuckles. It was opened by another footman in livery, with a round face and large eyes like a frog. The fish footman began by producing from his underarm a great letter, and this he handed over to the other, saying in a solemn tone, "For the Duchess, an invitation from the Queen to play croquet." The frog footman repeated in the same, and their pearls got entangled together. When Alice next peeped out, the fish footman was gone, and the other was sitting on the ground near the door, staring stupidly up into the sky. Alice went timidly up to the door and knocked. "There's no sort of use in knocking," said the footman, and that is for two reasons. First, because I'm on the same side of the door as you are. Secondly, because you're making such a noise inside, no one could possibly hear you. "Because they're making such a noise and a sneeze. How am I to get in?" asked Alice. "Are you to get in at all?" said the footman, into a large kitchen, which was full of smoke from one end to the other. The Duchess was sitting on a three-legged stool in the middle, nursing a baby. The cook was leaning over the fire, stirring a large cauldron, which seemed to be full of soup. "There's certainly too much pepper in that soup," Alice said to herself, as well as she could for sneezing. Even the Duchess sneezed occasionally, and as for the baby, it was sneezing and howling alternatively, without a moment's pause. The only two creatures in the kitchen that did not sneeze were the cook and a large cat, which was grinning from ear to ear. "Please would you tell me," said Alice, a little timidly, "why your cat grins like that?" "It's a Cheshire cat," said the Duchess, "and that's why." "I didn't know that Cheshire cats always grinned. In fact, I didn't know that cats could grin at all," said Alice. "You don't know much," said the Duchess, "and that's a fact." Just then the cook took the cauldron of soup off of the fire, and at once set to work throwing everything within her reach at the Duchess and the baby. The fire irons came first, then followed a shower of saucepans, plates, and dishes. The Duchess took no notice of them, even when they hit her, and the baby was howling so much already that it was quite impossible to say whether the blows hurt or not. "Oh, please mind what you're doing," cried Alice, jumping up and down in an agony of terror. "Here, you may nurse it a bit if you like," said the Duchess to Alice, flinging the baby at her as she spoke. "I must go and get ready to play croquet with the Queen." Alice caught the baby with some difficulty, as it was a queer-shaped little creature, and held out its arms and legs in all directions. "If I don't take this child away with me," thought Alice, "they'll sure to kill it in a day or two. Wouldn't it be murder to leave it behind?" She said the last words out loud, and the little thing grunted in reply. If you're going to turn into a pig, my dear, said Alice, I'll have nothing more to do with my cat. Alice was just beginning to think to herself, now what am I to do with this creature when I get it home? When it grunted again so violently that Alice looked down into its face with some alarm. This time there could be no mistake about it. It was neither more nor less than a pig. So she set the creature down and felt quite relieved to see it trot away quietly into the wood. Alice was a little startled by seeing the Cheshire cat sitting on a bough of a tree and a few yards off. The cat only grinned when it saw her. Cheshire puss, began Alice, rather timidly again. Would you please tell me which way I ought to go from here? And in that direction, waving the other paw, lives a March hare. Visit either you like. They're both mad.